The Ace of Spades cafe was a long, single-storey shack which looked like it had been made out of 2 old railway carriages laid end to end. It had a row of misty windows at the front and a pair of double doors in the middle, where the 2 carriages joined. 5 motorcycles were standing to the right of the doors. I'm no bike expert, but they looked like recent models and gleamed with their owner's pride. There was a single cycle on the left side of the doors. It looked older than the rest. The paintwork was chipped in places, and there was a cut in the leather of the pillion. Shirley pointed at it. "It's the ugly duckling of the fleet." "And not one that will turn into a swan like in the fable," I said. We climbed off the Triton and left it parked next to the ugly duckling, where it would attract plenty of attention. We headed towards the door. Shirley said, "What's the plan?" I said, "We don't have one. But if Rockerboy was known around here, perhaps someone has heard something. If we could get a name, it would give us something to go on. Best tactic in a situation like this is to sit back and take no notice of other people, as the new guys in town will be the centre of attention." I opened the door and we stepped inside. My eyes smarted from the heavy fug of bacon and cigarette fumes hanging in the air. On the jukebox, Eddie Cochran was belting out Summertime Blues. To the left, a small counter was smothered in breadcrumbs and tea slops. A glass cabinet on the counter held 2 sausage rolls and a currant bun. On the bun, one of the currants moved. A woodlouse, alarmed by our shadows, scurried for cover. There was a small kitchen behind the counter. On the stove, a saucepan of brown stuff bubbled like a mud pool. A blubbery bloke who could have doubled as Michelin Man was picking his nose. He had a bristly chin and piggy eyes. He was stripped for action in a sleeveless string vest and boxer shorts. His eyes fixed on me like I'd just announced I was going to burn the place down. The eyes moved to Shirley and softened a bit, like from diamond to tungsten. He said, "What's your pleasure?" in a voice that suggested nothing would give him more delight than to strangle us. I said, 2 coffees. He banged a couple of grubby mugs on the counter, spooned in some instant coffee from a tin, and topped up with water from a kettle which had been boiling on the stove next to the brown stuff. He said, "1 shilling." I handed him a coin, and we made our way into the other part of the shack, where a collection of ill-assorted tables and chairs had been roughly arranged in 2 rows. I glanced quickly around the room. There were 9 people in the place, 6 men and 3 women, all but one grouped around a long table. They turned as we walked in. Hostile eyes followed us as we made our way to the table closest to the door. "We got company, boss," said a youth with a widow's peak hairdo and a leather jacket with the word "Hell's Fire" on the front. Boss flecked his shoulders to show he'd heard, or perhaps just to prove he could do it. He had a pompadour haircut, rather like Rockerboy's. He wore a leather jacket with studs on the shoulders and "Death Before Dishonour" in Gothic lettering on his back. He said, "Yeah, I see with my own eyes, Chunky." He grinned, and everyone around the table grinned too. Boss said in a voice intended to carry, "I need coffee." The others around the table exchanged worried glances. Boss did that shoulder-flexing thing again. He said, "Herbie, you awake?" One of the gang had been sitting alone on a table at the back of the cafe. He stood up like the headmaster had just walked into the classroom. He was wearing a denim jacket rather than leathers. He had moist eyes, a freckled face, and thinning hair that no amount of Brill-cream would fashion into a pompadour. He grinned uneasily. "I'll get you a coffee, boss." His tongue ran nervously over a row of gapped teeth. He scurried towards the counter. "Make sure the coffee is just how I like it, Herbie." The others giggled and nudged each other to prove they loved seeing Herbie humiliated. Eddie Cochran chose the moment to finish Summertime Blues. A heavy silence settled over the place. There was a clunk, a click, and then another clunk, and on the jukebox, Gene Vincent started in on Bebop-a-Lula. A couple of the girls started to sway to the music. One of the boys said something, another nudged his mate, and the atmosphere relaxed a little. Shirley and I sat at the table and studied the steam rising off our coffee. I whispered, "Don't look round now, but at the far end of the place, there's what looks like a little shrine to James Dean."
"Rockerboy you ended his raspberry jam on the road?"
"The real one." A small ledge next to the window carried a couple of pictures of Dean in cheap frames. There was the stub of a candle in a holder. On the wall behind there were 6 action pictures of Dean, mostly, I guessed, stills from his films. We sipped our coffees. I said, "I hope one of these guys makes a move in our direction soon. I'd hate to have to order more of this sludge." But it looked as though we'd suffer that fate. We sat through Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good, Bo Diddley's You Can't Judge a Book by Looking at the Cover, and Gene Vincent's Pistol-Packing Mama before a shadow loomed over our table.
to keep listening to this audiobook. I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.